Hello again. One accusation which is routinely levelled against me by those who are, shall I say, not particularly members of my fan club is that I am dissatisfied with the present state of the country, not for any genuine and objective reason, but rather because it is the present. That is to say that I hanker after the past and have persuaded myself that it was all so much better before the modern world came and upset everything. By this reading of the situation, multiculturalism and the number of ethnic minorities visible on the streets is to people like me simply a reminder of how much the world has changed since the homogeneous white society which we knew in our youth. I find this odd because I far prefer the modern world in general to the way that things were, say, 60 years ago. But there are some aspects which I could live happily without. I was never opposed to immigration as such, and I've seen some advantages, ways in which immigration has improved life in Britain greatly. But I cannot see that happening today, and nor can I readily imagine how the level and type of immigration today will result in future advantages for the country. Perhaps I'm not making myself clear. Let me try and explain. As far as the past goes, I absolutely loathe the memory of Sundays in East London in the 1950s and early 1960s. Everything was grey and dull, and all the shops were closed. There was absolutely nothing to do. Some places even wouldn't allow cinemas to open. People might remember the fuss about places opening on the Sabbath, like theatres or cinemas. Um, there was a great deal of controversy about this. A lot of church-going people thought that nothing at all should be allowed to open on the Sabbath apart from churches, and that feeling was still pretty strong in the 1950s. In the description to this video, I give a link to a debate from in Parliament reported in Hansard in 1957 about this very subject because some districts refused to allow cinemas to open on the Sabbath. So you might live in a town and find that cinemas wouldn't open. Wales used to be particularly like that as regards Sabbath observance. Believe me, there was nothing more dreary than Sundays in those days. All that has changed dramatically, and these days many shops open on Sundays and they also stay open late in the evening. This too was something which was not the case 60 years ago. At that time, all shops closed at 5, and if you wanted a loaf of bread, you had to wait until the next day. This is a situation which seems to us now almost incredible, and I think that most of us are very glad that we can go shopping late at night, and on Sunday we can visit a garden centre or go to the pictures if we feel like it. This is one way in which the modern world is immeasurably better than things were 60 years ago. And guess what? We have immigration to thank for that change. When Hindus began arriving in Britain from India in the 1950s, they soon realised that there was an opening for enterprise. All the shops closed at 5 o'clock, but there was no law which dictated that this should be so. It was just how it had always been. So it was that some Indians saved up enough money to buy tobacconists or sweet shops and then began stocking things other than sweets, cigarettes and newspapers. They also began staying open after 5. Naturally, with all the other shops closed, anybody who wanted to buy tea or bread in the evening, say, went to a shop run by a Gujarati Hindu. So it was that the corner shop enjoyed a sudden boom. The longer such places stayed open in the evening, the more that other shops realised that they had to compete and began altering their own closing times. This was the start of a revolution which, ended in the virtual abolition of the Sunday Trading Acts. Um, most there are limitations on the number of hours that shops can open on a Sunday. Viewers will probably have noticed that their supermarket locally opens at 10 and closes at 4, but it is allowed to open. Most shops are allowed to open. That's a direct result of what was happening with the longer opening hours in the evenings and so on. I seriously doubt if anybody today would really want to go back to the situation which existed in the 50s, when it was sometimes necessary to travel to another town simply to go to the cinema. This then is both a way that life has improved in this country and also a benefit which is almost entirely due to immigration. I don't think that I need to dwell for too long on the downsides that immigration has brought, though. These are apparent to us all. The question we have to ask is, do we think that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages today, or is it the other way round? It seems to me that most of the advantages which we can identify are associated with the Indian subcontinent, uh, chiefly Hindus and Sikhs. There are some connected with other groups. Bengali and Pakistani Muslims brought us the Indian restaurants, of course, which was also a welcome innovation. It is when we look at other groups that we begin to falter and find it tricky to name the benefits that resulted from their coming to Britain. Immigration in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. Unlimited and unrestricted immigration, though, is a bad thing, and it is this which has brought many undesirable changes to Britain.